Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zon Academy. Today, we're so lucky to have John Johnson here from Johnson's Dental Lab over in Florida, and he's going to be discussing the future denture demand to the current dental technician. And he's going to be focusing on Asiga printers and Lucitone Digital Print and how this has transformed his laboratory and how it really transformed him as a CDT, as well as a family man and a lab owner. So you're going to hear a great story from John, and we're just so thankful to have you here, John. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Fran. Thank you for having me.
Of
Um,
course. I know you have some poll questions that you have, prepared for us. So we really would love it. All of our attendees would be interactive with us. I'm going to put up a couple of them and I'll let you know in advance and I'll have them up for like 30 seconds. So please answer them. We'd love to have your feedback as well as a live Q&A. John agreed to a live Q&A at the end of his presentation. So all you have to do is type in the questions at the bottom of your screen and we would be happy to answer them. Again, that's at the end of the presentation. So John, I'm going to turn this over and everybody enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Fran. Thanks again for having me. Um, just a little background. I'm a 20-year technician, CDT. Started out, went to a recognized school over in Indian River down in Fort Pierce. Was very fortunate to work with some great technicians coming out of school for about 5 years. Started Johnson Dental Lab about 15 years ago. And I've been doing Lucitone Digital Print for about 4 years now. And since being one of the earlier adopters of the materials in the system, I've been able to go out and I've been able to go out and talk a little bit about the materials. I've been able to train a couple laboratories. I've done a few of these webinars, and I've got to give Fran just a ton of credit on Zon Academy. It's such a great tool. She honestly just gets the best speakers and just plucks them and throws them out there. The Jack Moranos, the Mintrans, the Jimmy Stiegels. It's just a great group. It almost feels like a vault of Chicago presentations, and I got to give her a ton of credit for the job that she's done with that, and obviously Zon Dental. But today our focus is going to be on Lucitone Digital Print, and as Fran was saying, basically how it's transformed my laboratory. It's transformed the way that I view my time. It has given me back so much and taken me away from the bench. So it really gives me the ability to focus more on my business and less on the actual production of the products themselves. I think that naturally there's certain characteristics about a technician that make you a good technician, and some of those characteristics are also what kind of work against you in business. And what I've found with this product and this system is it's been just such a happy mistake for me to get in it at the right time, have the support that I've had, and really transform my business and my clinics that I work with. So my goals today for this discussion, and let me start by saying on this first thing is we're all at different places in our career. What do they say? Comparison is the greatest thief of joy, and behind that is like we're all at our own place. We're all just trying to improve day by day, week by week, month by month. So there's no you're behind, there's no you're way ahead. We all have to be in this constant state of learning, and we all have to be in this constant state of growth, because ultimately we can push that towards our inpatient. So that's a big thing. Another thing that I want to cover today is I want you to be really intentional about your path moving forward. I think we are at a very critical tipping point as far as digital dentures go. As far as starting to creep over into that place where you are starting to get to that point where you need to be adopting some of these technologies so that you can continue to grow your relationships within your clinics. I want to talk about the futures that we're going to be facing. Also want to talk about the clinical workflows that once clinics start using these workflows, they're going to be the new drivers of where this market is going to go. I'm going to cover just a quick little story about analog dentures and my dad's story of his business. Now, he's not a lab technician, he's a lifelong plumber, but just the analog dentures and my dad's business kind of really almost correlate with each other. I'm going to talk about training the next generation of technician and how these materials are going to help us do that. And then, like I said, digital isn't so new anymore. So that helps us because that trying to hit that target, it's not moving quite nearly as much. We now have more support. We now have more webinars. We have more YouTube videos. We have more social media support where we lean on each other as peers. And there's more and more distributors that have gotten involved and they want to help you along the way. So the support and equipment options are better. I've always said, being kind of back as a lonely tech, it's like, man, if I could just multiply myself, I could do so much more. I could do so much more. And there's always been, specifically in my area of Central Florida, it's always been a little bit of a struggle to find the right labor force to utilize. But these systems are alleviating a lot of that, and I'm going to cover some of that. And then lastly, make sure if you're going to make transitions into this digital space, or if you're going to invest in a printer, or you're going to invest in the materials, make sure that you're partnering with companies that are going to support you in the best way. I've been very fortunate. I haven't had any bad experiences, but I know that when I pick up the phone to call and I want to talk about my software and what's going on with my software, I need those answers as fast as I can get them. And I need that type of support so that I can keep my machine running. So those are my goals for today. One thing that I'm really proud of, and that's actually why I have you here in my weight room, is, and it kind of goes back to talking about being intentional about where we are. Many years, I've coached basketball for years, so I've spent a lot of time investing in kids and investing in my own kids. And a lot of times your time just kind of evaporates and you kind of miss sight of yourself. And for the longest time, I kind of let myself go too far, honestly. And on that date, August 17th, is when I decided to be intentional about my health. No health scares, nothing like that. But it was just time. It was just time for me to be tired of where I was. And I think that, even though it's kind of silly to share this, but it really correlates with your denture department. If you are at a place where you just don't know where to go, and it's time to just really sit down, make decisions, dial in, and figure out what your next steps moving forward are. And this is just a detail of how crazy I kind of got with, following my macros and following the calories. And I did the same thing with a workout system where I wanted to work out, but I didn't want to hurt myself, but I wanted to track it. And I've gotten myself to a really good place, and I can't wait to figure out what my next goals are going to be in regards to that. So I've got my health in order. And naturally, if you talk to anyone who's lost weight or they've gotten more active, they naturally start looking for more ways in their life to try to improve. But let's talk about the future that we are going to face in the next 10 or 15 years, specifically when it comes to dentures. This is a projection of what denture demand is going to look like. And as you can see, we are on the upswing as baby boomers are reaching that retirement age. We're reaching a pivotal point in going to be reaching the highest demands that we have actually ever seen. And we've got to be ready for that. Now, on the flip side of that, we are facing the least amount of people that we've ever had entering this type of labor. Now, I don't know, I have theories, but I don't know what I would like to pinpoint it on. And I don't think it's CAD CAM. I don't think it's the machinery. I don't think it's all these things. And, we still are going to need a great deal of people to conduct this type of work. I mean, we need their minds. We need the production on the back end. We need more technicians in this space. So this system gives us the ability, I think, to bring more people in at a lower level and then build them up. which is a really nice thing, and it'll be a great thing for our industry and again for our inpatient. So we have a big problem to solve. That's just the fact of the matter, and it's time today to start figuring that out. So the questions become, where do we begin, and then how do we start addressing these problems head on? Fran, did you want to? There you go.
Yeah, so here's our first poll question. Would you like to address new labor demands? If you wouldn't mind answering this one question, we'll leave it up for like 30 seconds.
Sounds good. Yeah, and I don't know, every area is a little bit different geographically as far as having access to labor. My personal experience being here in Lake Wales is I I live an hour and a half from Tampa. I live an hour and 15 minutes from Orlando. My area in the last couple of years has just been rapidly growing, which is great. But for the longest time, when I was kind of making my decisions on what I wanted my business to look like, I almost said, I would never find a technician that I could convince to move into this small town that doesn't have a ton of restaurant options. It doesn't appeal to a young person. Um, so those type of concerns are kind of what guides you to being how you are as a business. And even with that element, this digital workflows and this digital dentistry option allows me to be much more of just a singular person. Um, so it was a great option for me to try to combat those labor problems. Now, like I said, I think we're getting some crazy amount of growth around me. So I'm kind of challenging myself to get more and more people involved in this industry because I think it really needs it. Fran, are we good on those polls?
We are good on the polls, but I just
Oh,
want to make one quick comment, John. I mean, I know that you said, it was silly for you to put up the pictures of yourself on your health journey, but really, by doing what you're doing in your business gave you more time, right? To concentrate a little bit on your health. And you weren't so frazzled at work because you were able to automate and be able to, take some analog processes and digitize them, put them into the digital world. So honestly, that was not silly at all. That's like life and being able to manage your time and having the time to manage to get healthy.
right.
So
And
that's a good
and
thing.
really to piggyback on that, I wouldn't even be doing this if I didn't have, I mean, my printers are running now. So I wouldn't, that, like you said, that freedom that it gives me back, it just enables me to clear my mind, move on to other problems that I've got to solve. And it gives me the ability to be here, which is great.
Awesome.
Here we go. So when I talk about those challenges that we're going to face as far as our denture demand and our labor issues that we're going to be facing, I think that there's a big thing that's being missed there because the clinical challenges or the clinical demands are the same that we're going to experience. So just imagine a dental office that's already maxed out. They're already scheduled out for 3 months, 6 months. People just can't get in. And I'm kind of speaking for my area a little bit because, like I said, we are growing like crazy, and we're not popping up new dental offices as fast as the homes are coming in. Um, but you're getting new people. You're getting a higher demand. You're going to get these calls where people need to get things fabricated, and these clinics are going to start seeing money that's on the table that they need to go out and grab. So we've got to, as a laboratory, we've got to find a way to become efficient on our side, and that way we can transfer that efficiency to those clinics and try to share some of that appointment saving, all of those things so that they can start seeing and treating more patients. And I honestly think as the clinics get more and more educated, and I think that I've kind of been harping on that for a while, but I think as clinics get educated, it's going to transform the way that dentures are fabricated. So our conversations as to what step we need to go to or where we need to go is going to evolve to the point where, unfortunately, it will kind of eliminate some of those older analog workflows. And this is an example of the ads that are going around. I plucked these off of social media. They're two appointment dentures are possible. Two appointment dentures. Click on a video so you can see. No joke. Two appointment dentures. And then some marketing genius wrote a book over here on the bottom left, which is mine, obviously, because I'm not really good at marketing. But we're all sharing the capabilities of what's there. Now, I will say, two appointments. I had a great lecture when I was in Chicago, and I watched. It was a lady. She was a dentist, and she was talking more along the lines of three appointments, which is great. And then after the fact, we talked and had a nice conversation, and we talked about the two appointment option. And her response was it's a lot easier to move people from 4 to 3 than it is to move from 4 to 2. And I'm like, okay, that makes perfect sense. And I think that's a good bridge to start with if you're concerned with the workflows, if you're concerned with how to do it. That's a really good spot to start, is trying to save people and get them down to those 3 appointments. And I'll show you when we get into it how that works. So just a quick story about analog dentures. And this was a case that I did the other day. I think we were doing like a reinforcement frame that I had to embed in my denture, and that's the reason that I waxed it. But analog dentures, they're going to have their place, right? For a period of time, they're going to have their place. And I even have some clinicians that they're not scanning quite yet. And that's okay. And that's why I kind of said about the 3 appointment denture, even though a doc's still taking impressions, even though he still wants to work through wax rims, it may not be the best option for efficiency for his clinic or for his patient. But at the end of the day, we're still getting from A to Z, and that's kind of on his timeline. But what I wanted to kind of share with you was my dad's a lifelong plumber. And when I want to say I was probably 12, my dad decided he wanted to go out and start his own business and be his own plumbing company. And he did that. And he carries a lot of the similar traits that I do, and I think a lot of other technicians do, in the fact that we're the only ones that can do it. We do it the best. I can't trust someone else to do it for me. It's my business. I've got to take care of it. And with that said, he became this one-man wrecking crew, and he found his ceiling. He found what his maximum output was going to be, and that's as much as he could possibly give. Now, during that time of reaching that maximum output, his client base was a little bit older. It was a little bit older of a generation. A lot of the older ladies like to talk to my dad, and my dad's a big talker. So, you want a cup of coffee, Johnny? Oh, absolutely. And then there he is. He's there for 30 minutes talking to you. But he kind of built his business around not making new connections and reaching new clientele. So, and I think that the correlation that I'm having with my dad in that business, which, not that my dad didn't fail the business, the business and the model that he had going is what essentially failed. And he's no longer in business, happy as can be, but that business idea didn't work out because his clientele started to die off, essentially. And I think that we're in this space, and I see people make comments on social media and stuff about analog versus digital, and kind of wanting to continue to cling to analog. And I, like I said, I love analog. I just did this setup like last week. I enjoyed every second of it because I enjoy the artistry of making teeth however we do it. I do enjoy it. But the problem is like I said before, with those clinical advertisements of what's possible is what's going to drive us out of of producing these analog dentures in this fashion. And if you build a business that is tailored to clients that only want to go this route, then unfortunately your career is going to be as long as theirs. And that's the part that my dad didn't see early on in his business. The relationships that he was building would end. So digital dentistry and Lucitone Digital Print is honestly the keys to the castle. As far as you could still keep this, you could still keep this element, you could still keep your clients that want analog dentistry, but you can evolve into taking on the new client, the one that wants to do reference dentures, the one that everyone's doing more and more all on X. And I think we're about to see a big revolution in the intraoral scanners. I think there's about to be some big developments in the next couple years that are going to change that whole space as well. And really, if you're not getting the foundation of digital dentistry from this side of it, you're not going to be ready. You're not going to be ready when it takes 3 or 4 steps. So you really need to get this baseline. But that's my dad. Love him, absolute my hero. Um, so when I talk about my dad and I talk about him reaching his ceiling, I talk about him. He maxed out his time. He could only put in so many hours in the day. He did such a great job raising me and my brother. Never missed a practice. Always our ball coach. All that good stuff. So when you have that limitation on your day, you've got to make the most out of your time. And again, he was capped. So for me, once, like I said before, once I got my health in order, it was time for me to start trying to figure out what else I could improve on. And time was my next focus. So with time, the best way to get yourself in a position is hire, right? Now, this system is a little bit of a form of hiring, in my opinion, because you're hiring a machine to do part of the work. So it's not a human, it's not an employee, but it is a form of hiring. Um, but it goes right into being able to train the next generation a little bit easier. Now, when I was focusing on my time, I read this book, and I'm not here to promote a book. I'm just telling you this book changed my life. Um, but this book has some principles that really speak directly to lab technicians, honestly, especially business owner lab technicians. Um, and one of the big things that it talks about is it wants you to audit your time, wants you to take a detailed catalog of what you do throughout that day, figure out what items within that are really driving you and giving you good energy, and then figure out what pays you the most for those specific items. And then the ones that aren't lighting you up, the ones that aren't making you much money, those are the ones that you really need to find someone else to do them for you. And really, it's not so much about you're above this and you need to hand this off to a lesser person. You're really creating a lot of value for the next person. And that's where I go. We're losing technicians to retirement like crazy, and we're not. Our schools are gone. We're very limited in the schooling, and we've got to get more people off the street to come in and do this type of work. And this system really gives you the ability to do that. This is an example of the time audit table that I built for myself, and a lot of it's lab focused. I took every piece of the lab that I would do, and then in the energy side, I pretty much made them almost all red, because as a 20-year technician, as someone who's reaching my ceiling, you start reaching that level of burnout, and it's not a good feeling. The ride up is amazing because you want to build it, you want to find that ceiling, and then once you get there and you just keep hitting the ceiling, hitting the ceiling, hitting the ceiling, you're ready to find some reprieve somewhere. And this table was great for me. You can also use it in your social life, your exercise, your diet. You could do anything with this. It's great. So a great example of finding someone to bring them into the industry, and to get them started. This is Jennifer. She was a beautician for 13 years. She got tired of that, moved on to a different job, worked that for about a year, and then realized that it was just taking her nowhere. So through conversation, someone said she wanted to possibly do some hygiene or something like that. And then once she had the opportunity to talk to me, she says, "Well, that's really neat. Would you mind if I came in and look at it?" So brought her in, and her hire date was November 11th. So she's been with me for 5 months. So we did this really cool exercise when I did my lecture in Chicago. I specifically had an older design that was already there, which I designed. I wouldn't suggest bringing someone off the street and in 5 months having me be your lead designer. But there's a lot of other steps within this process that she was able to do through that level of training. And really, to get to Chicago, that was a month ago. So she really was only been with me about 3 or 4 months by the time we made these samples, and I was able to actually hand these out as my working samples for the group. And I prefaced it with the fact that a employee that was with me for 3 months fabricated them, but in the same breath, I'm not ashamed of the work that she produced. So, and that's where we are. That's where I think you have the ability to find more Jennifers out there and bring them in. Let them see the process, see how that works. Let them see the designing, let them see how the workflow goes, and you really can tap into some talent that they may not even have known was there. So let's talk about some of the benefits of the system itself. And I think there's a lot of obvious benefits. We kind of, like me and Fran said earlier, we're getting to a point where this isn't so new. We've said these things a few times, but just to reiterate, if you haven't heard, um, so for the dentist, I think one of the big things is they can attract a lot of new patients through these accelerated workflows. You hear stories of your grandmother talking to your aunt about the long process to get her denture situated, and she had to go back and she had to make adjustment after adjustment. And I think that story is going to flip quite a bit. And I think that these dentists that are utilizing these workflows and working with laboratories that are using Lucitone Digital Print, they're going to have the ability to attract new patients because of it. So that's been a great aspect. I have used so the permanent digital record. That's been something that has been used many times for me. Often the one that I get the most is, "Hey, Miss Such and Such really loved that denture. Is there any way that she can get another one?" Now, in the analog world, that just doesn't work. We're going back to either I'm trying to figure out what parts of the puzzle I still have, or we're restarting or recreating something, and it's not going to be exactly like the first one I created. So this gives me that permanent digital record that I can just go ahead and hit reprint. That also covers dropped it in the sink, dropped it on the ground, lost it skydiving. Like, it covers a lot of different things. And like I talked about the post insertion adjustments, the stats are saying they got to come back less, and a lot of it's got to do with how well they fit. And then we're saving chair time. A lot of it's got to do with some of the workflows, but the lack of adjustments, the great fit, the consistency, the communication, it's what's really speeding up this process for these clinics. Now for the lab, like I covered with Jennifer, the trainability of being able to operate the printers, clean the parts, fusing the parts, finishing the parts, all of that stuff is actually quite trainable. I mean, you still got to be a bit of an artist, but attention to detail. But at the same breath, we can train some of these steps and really get to where you can scale your business. What I've experienced probably some of the most as far as the lab goes is the consistency. Um, almost no breakage as far as dentures go. I've got less than 5 out of anything that I've created. Probably half of those were due to me making them pushing the boundaries a little bit, making them a little thinner than they should have been. So the consistency's there. Like I said, easy learning curve. The aesthetics are there. It's one thing that the portrait smile libraries really hit on. You've got the ability to be creative among, within the gingiva portion of it, but the IPN, the high characterized teeth, they really hit the nail right on the head as far as aesthetic goes. Again, the digital record for easy replacement, the validated engineered systems, and I think that things will continue to evolve as we go into other print avenues. And I think we covered pretty much everything for the patient. They're going to get fewer visits, better fit, better consistency, digital record. So the lab time savings, that's a huge thing that we need. We need more time back. We need to be able to, like Fran said, I need to be able to go exercise. So some of the big ones that you see that I don't really, you're not going to find it in the manual, but for me, I don't articulate my cases, when I'm making a complete denture. So you're saving a lot of labor time on that and materials. Less equilibrations because the one-to-one print, and I don't have an articulation, there's really nothing to equilibrate. The denture prints based off your design, and it gives you exactly what that is. So that correlates straight to the mouth. So you've got less equilibrations, which post-processing, you've got less time management in the tooth cabinet. You're not processing, you're not devesting, you're not bulk grinding, you're not finishing. And I'm sorry, I'm carrying on about more bullet points that are actually there, but and then you've got multiple outputs that cover your try-ins and your finals. So when I design, depending on how you set up your arch, if you wanted to do full arch, you get 3 outputs. I set up in quadrants, which I highly recommend. 2 posterior quadrants and then 1 anterior quadrant, and that gives me 5 outputs. It gives me a monolithic print that I can utilize to do basically a shaded tooth colored print, or they give me the pink output, which is your pink base with the sockets, and then and the quadrants would come in the teeth. So and those multiple outputs are great. And then the try-in part, that's the part where I was talking about earlier, how we can at least evolve into doing a 3-appointment denture versus a 4 or a 2. And the way that you accomplish that is even if you got a doc that still wants to take impressions, still wants to go through the wax rim, centric relation bite appointment, you can still, because you're not losing any data. And what I actually did once I got to a point where I got really comfortable with it and my clinicians got comfortable with it, I started to look at the mathematics of a try-in print. So a try-in print would cost me around $15 or so to do a try-in print. And then my final would roughly cost me close to $26, $27. So I got to the point where I was getting so many go to finish that I started to see a real opportunity to capture that $10 gap and then also save my clinician that time. So that was one of the first things that I started doing early on. And that's what really allowed me to put my arms around my clinicians and go, look, this is where the industry is going and this is how it can affect you. So that was a big piece. And then obviously now we're working more towards 2 appointments, and I'll show a little bit of that. I love having the ability to print something as I leave my office. It's a weird thing that I enjoy, but I enjoy that. And then the scalability. I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and we were talking about. I think I posted that that wax up, just kind of basically calling it kind of a lost art. And he said, "Hey man, that denture setup was really cool. It was good." And I was like, "Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that." But then I reiterated to him that, I just sat there and I was actually designing a denture while I was talking to him on the phone. And, in half the time that I sat there and did that wax up, I've done upper and lower, basically start to finish. And I'm ready with my outputs. I'm ready to be done with the case. So that's where the scalability really comes in, because now I have the ability to give more of myself to my clients and to my patients, because I can just tackle more. Um, and then the one thing that I really really love is I almost print. I print anything that can be printed. So there's many other digital applications beyond just the denture element of it. Once you dive in, if you're a completely analog denture department, once you dive in, you'll realize that there's so many applications for print that you can utilize to help you speed up, even further. So again, that target is becoming more still. Our training is more accessible. Um, the companies supporting us are in a better and better place. So that it's not so much a moving target anymore. This was something that was cool that got launched in Chicago. It's a flexible resin that Carbon put out. And what I like to watch a little bit is I like to watch when the products start to come out. And this is kind of what I did with Lucitone Digital Print, because if you can remember, Lucitone Digital Print came out and it was specifically for carbon printers. And I don't know exactly, but I think that the reason that they did that was there was a little bit of a rush to market as far as a lot of these manufacturers. They knew that was the future and they wanted to grab it, and they knew that if they could grab it first, you'd have the higher chance of grabbing everybody. And what I really give a lot of credit to Dentsply Sirona and the people that developed this product, they decided that they were going to be as safe as possible. And they partnered with carbon printers, and they wanted that material because that name had been built over 30 or 40 years. The Lucitone brand had been built. So they couldn't rush that to market and kind of rush it out there and then have failures. So they were patient, which is something that I kind of stood back and really appreciated. And then once it became available in Asiga, that's when I decided that Asiga was a better fit for me. And that's why I went that route. Now, going back to this flexible resin, all the companies know that this flexible resin is going to be the future as well. So Carbon's kind of leading the way, and we'll see others that are coming out. So that gives me one more item within my lab that I can print. That gives me one more thing that I can give myself some more time back, instead of going through and making this like a Valplast partial. Another thing, and this workflow and this print system is not validated for Lucitone Digital Print. Let me clearly kind of state that. But eventually, something is going to have to be validated for this ExoCAD workflow. And this is a snap partial design where you can design the partial in basically Lego parts almost, and you would fuse all those together. You get a tissue side, you get a gingiva side, and then you get your teeth side. And that's just another opportunity for us to stay out of the processing room. And I'm watching this one closely, and I played with it quite a bit in Chicago. And I'm going to be working towards trying to get this in my laboratory as soon as possible, because like I said, that can free up even more ability for me to scale and give me more time back. Let's talk about the lab communication. So we've talked about all those benefits. We talked about the target starting to slow down a little bit. And I think that a part of that target that I'm referencing is clinics are starting to understand. So they're starting to understand how the data share works, what the information that we need looks like. So that's been huge for them to just kind of, and you could tell, like they take on some of the learning the same way that we do with a finger and scratching the head, and they're like, man, I got to get this figured out. And once they do, then they own it. So the data share is huge. Digital record, obviously, doc call you up and say, hey, do you happen to have an opposing for Miss Sue? I'm doing just a simple repair. Do you got an opposing? There's all kinds of little things that are in there that are kind of added benefits to being a part of it. I like to verify my fit at the bite appointments. So if I am working with a doc in an analog fashion, I'll print that base. And the reason I do that is that fit that I print out of that base is exactly what I get on the back end of my final denture, because I'm still utilizing the same scan from the same model. So that's a great opportunity for me to not have any hiccups on the back end when it comes to fit. We also have scannable try-ins for the adjustment. So say try-in doesn't go exactly right, you have the ability to scan that try-in as your new wax rim, and I detail that a little bit in my video here. I love the fact that the wax records remain intact. If you have a bite that just didn't go right, like not even close, you still have those wax records that are there that a doctor and assistant can continue to utilize if they need them. And then the biggest is the reference opportunities. That's what reference denture, you may as well call it a 2-appointment denture. I don't know what kind of terminology we want to, I think reference has been the heaviest use of it, but that's the technique that we all need to really get our, wrap our arms around and get figured out. So let's talk about some of the workflows. And I start with reference dentures because I think that's the most, truly, it's the most pivotal thing that's going to have happened to us in a while. And I think the only thing that's going to trump that is the advancements in intraoral scanning and photogrammetry, and where that's going to go is the only thing that's new enough right now that could possibly trump reference dentures. So just to cover, this is our goals for that first appointment, because we want to be able to deliver that denture on the next appointment. So I've done this both ways, where you address one arch at a time, or you address both arches at the same time. I would always suggest that you take a bite with it as well, just to give you a little bit, the doctor to get some more stability scan. That's one thing that can really help. But you're looking to get these wash impressions, and you're looking to scan those. You're looking to scan the facial aspects of the dentures themselves in occlusion, which, like I said, that bite can help you. And then you're trying to get those intaglio scans so that you can utilize those as your working model. Now, this video kind of shows how I work into my alignment. I was just watching a video the other day, and I'll show it in the next screen, as to how this girl was working with a reference denture, and she got honestly maniacal with the smile design in making it exactly like the denture previous. Now, typically when I design a reference denture, I'm not giving them exactly what they have. I'm giving them a new smile design. But I'm overlaying it on that arch width. I'm placing it in those same facial positions. But here those intaglios are getting paired up with the inside of those wash impressions. And then once we're able to take all of that other data away, now we have those two intaglio scans in centric relation, and we're ready to move forward with a new denture. And I think I show it. There you go. So if you're doing one arch at a time, you have just a singular. If you're doing two, that's what you end up with. And now from that, we have just the best communication tool that we've ever had for creating a new denture in the fact of the old denture. Now, how many times have you gotten an impression of an old denture and they say, hey, reference this, or whatever it is. You're taking that model, and you're picking out your mold. You can make a bunch of measurements, and you can give them the exact tooth shape. But after that, you're kind of playing with it, and you're trying to just get things to line up properly. And it's just never exact. This system here gives you the ability to really overlay that. And I can guarantee that I'm hitting my midline, or I'm guaranteeing that if doc says, hey, move that midline over 2 millimeters to the left, I pull up my grid, my measurement grid, and I go right to 2 millimeters. And, even if you wanted to verify, take a photo. Here it is, doc, 2 millimeters, moved it over. So it's a fabulous communication tool. It's something unlike we've never had anything at our hands like this before. And then that was the outcome of that specific case, which was a 2 appointment deal, and she was a fabulous patient. This is another great application that I utilize with immediate dentures. The beautiful, beautiful piece of creating immediate dentures digitally is I get to digitally remove those teeth, but then those teeth, when I move to the smile design step, the original scan that has the original teeth still there, I get a whole nother scan slider to bring back into my design, so that I'm able to, similar to that reference denture, I'm able to overlay those two, so I'm hitting midline. I'm kind of mimicking shape and form as far as what the patient's actually used to, and you can see that was just a fabulous outcome for that patient. A great job by the doctor too. This is kind of detailing what that immediate design looks like, and this is something that's it's critical for how you're going to communicate with your clinicians, because when you are on your own and you're designing this, you can really follow a lot of the details, almost to an extreme way. And you've got to make sure that if a patient has a little bit of a cant, or if it naturally has a little bit of a midline off, like some of those things, if you're going to follow them, you kind of want to verify with doc and make sure that you're meeting the expectations of what they're looking for on the back end. So just in that, you can see where I was able to set those, and then this is that outcome. And again, that case never hit my articulator. Very minimal adjustments at delivery appointment. The digital way it's there. Now, we're not all perfect. Sometimes there are circumstances that happen, and when something goes wrong, we're the first call that anyone makes, and it's time to go to work and try to figure out how to fix it. So I had this design. It was an immediate denture, tight space in the posterior, super erupted teeth. Didn't have any lower posteriors for a long time, but you can see where I placed the arrangement. Now this was a class 2 patient, and I really brought her smile design way back in. We're making upper and lower, which is why the new smile design doesn't really integrate well with those natural teeth. But I'm showcasing the fact that we really brought that into a decent position. However, at delivery appointment, through the extractions and through the delivery of the device itself, this was our outcome. So you can see there's pursed lips. The incisal edge is far too long. Now, granted, she had no space in that posterior, so that little bit of a shorter posterior tooth was honestly inevitable at that point. But obviously, this is something that we wanted to correct. We can't have this lady going down the road like this. So these were my directions from the doctor. Decrease the vertical by 3 millimeters. She wanted to elongate the maxillary teeth. Well, she says elongate, which she really meant was she wanted to raise them. And then we needed to move them more palaty because she was having too much of the pursing of the lips. Now she wanted to go to a try-in step, and that's fine. I could have very easily done a try-in step, but again, I take the risk a lot of times. So I was given quite a bit of information, so I was happy to move forward and try to take this to finish. Now, what we did with that existing denture is we referenced it. We did a wash inside. We collected all of our data. We collected all of our scans. And now those exact movements that she's asking from me on paper are exactly what I can give her in a digital design. So we were able to take that, overlay it, and recreate those two. And that was her outcome, which was a lot more fitting for her. And you can still see in that posterior where we were a little bit limited on space, but that's a much better plane of occlusion. That's a much better presentation of those anterior 6. And it really it falls right into her smile really well. Now, something that I've been juggling with a little bit with immediates is I'm considering trying to do a little bit more of the monolithic try-ins, and trying to convert those into an appliance where they can wear and heal, and then have them come back, do the wash, um, and then create a final appliance from that after they've healed a bit. See, traditionally in the analog setting, which a lot of the clinicians are kind of used to, is you're creating somewhat of a final denture or an interim denture, and then they are relining that until they're ready and healed for a true final appliance. I think the digital aspect gives you the ability to go to that monolithic without going all the way to final, give them something to wear that's still aesthetic because it's still the same materials. And get you to that final in a just a different pattern. This video I was just highlighting just the analog, more of an analog design. I mean, it's a digital design, obviously, but we're working off of wax rims, just showing you, if you're unfamiliar, that you're still leaning on your denture knowledge that you already have. I shouldn't be so wrapped up in social media, but I saw a few posts the other day, and it's like, we can't go digital. We're going to lose all these things. And really, my argument to that is, once you understand what those things are, you have far more control in the digital setting of what those outcomes are. So yes and no. We've got to share the knowledge that we have, which comes with hiring, comes with teaching people, comes with teaching someone how to design. One other thing that I haven't personally utilized much, but it's something that I'm interested in looking into, but there's design services out there as well. So if you feel like this part feels a little daunting at first, there's design services out there that can work with you, that can send you back an arrangement that you can play with and tweak. Another application is acrylic partials. You can design, and my favorite part about the acrylic partial is the utilization of desirable undercuts. So you can see that yellow tint on the scans there. That kind of indicates where an undercut is. And there's a key there's a key there that kind of shows you what that depth looks like. So you can really have control of what you're almost creating a partial over a surveyed model digitally. Without ever have to survey anything, without ever having to duplicate a model, all those factors that are a little bit cumbersome. Like this gives you an output that you're ready to go and print. And Lucitone Digital Print is validated for acrylic partials and flippers. This is a little bit of flipper design here. And what I really want to show is you can really manipulate that tooth in almost a crown and bridge feeling, because I'm working with one tooth. I can morph it, I can bend it, I can do things that I can't do with a denture tooth. So that is another application that Lucitone is validated for. This is a flipper outcome. This is a number 9 flipper that I wish was 0.5 millimeter longer, and you wouldn't tell where it was in the mouth. But that is IPN, and you can see how well that just blends right in. We talked a little bit about the try-in communication. Now, one of the big things when you're getting started in this is when an assistant pulls this case out of the pan, they go, wow, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know what to do with this. So it's our job to really talk them through that part of it. And honestly, the only thing that's different about these is you can't move the teeth. That's really the only thing that's different. So I always say slight adjustments. You can either do them at the try-in or you can do them at the final, because you're going to be there. But if you do the slight adjustments, you got to let me know. Possibly take a little quick bite, and that way I'm able to rescan in, reposition, and reorient my upper and lower so that I don't want to reproduce what I produced the first time. I want to change that orientation so that I have a occlusion that's going to be not equilibrated on. And then also, like I said before, with the wax rims still being intact, you have the ability to go back to one of those if you really needed to. This is a try and rescan. Now, I believe it's 2023. In 3Shape, there's an update where you can add a scanned try-in, and it kind of allows you to go through a little bit easier. Now, I am stubborn and I like things to work every time, so I'm always a little bit later on the software upgrade side of things. But there's a lot of great resources on Three Shape Study Group on Facebook. There's a lot of really good resources where you can just get into the group, go to the search bar, see if it's been talked about before, and a lot of times you can get your answer before you even have to ask it. Um, but that try and rescan allows me to go in. I still have the arrangement. I still have my communication with my doctors as far as what movements we need to make if it was an aesthetic move or if it was a plan of occlusion move. Um, and then also during that rescan, we're able to reorient the upper and lower. So
I believe we have another poll question that I'm going to launch for everyone. And it says, would you like something exciting and new to talk with your existing clinicians and, more importantly, new prospects? If you wouldn't mind just answering for us.
yeah, Fran. So I think that this is going to be key for all of us, especially business leaders moving forward. Is And this is one thing that I've experienced. I've never, because I've been in removables and really I've been in strictly removables for the last 20 years. I have seen um, we have had a little bit more of a proximity based business. So it was almost as if, like, I'm here in Florida. If I called someone in Georgia, they would literally respond with, "Well, how can you help me?" Like, there's going to be so much back and forth. Um, there's a number of factors as to why it's a little bit harder to get a more of a remote client. And this digital aspect really gives you the ability, because of there's less back and forth. It makes us less proximity business and more of a national and even more of a global type business, um, because of the service. Now, the other thing we ran a big campaign first of the year, a marketing sales campaign, and I in my experience as selling this industry and selling what I do, I've never generated more conversations than I have in the past 5-6 months about this topic. And I think that there's an eagerness to learn on the clinical side. Um, and again, they're facing the same demands that we are. They understand that they've got to make adjustments to be able to utilize and do more. But the existing relationships that I keep building with my current clients, and the new ones that I'm able to have. I'm actually 2 weeks. I'm doing a lunch and learn up in Claremont, and I'm planning on hitting a couple other offices while I'm there. And it's just such an exciting topic to talk about, because it's more than me being a better artist than you, or it's more than me having a better price than you. Um, there's so much more that we are able to problem solve and help with this particular product, um, that it's been amazing for me, and I hope it doesn't stop, because I love talking to new people. I love educating people on this topic, um, and I think it's just been a great opportunity to grow. So on this slide, I say answer the call, and my question to you is are you ready to start having those conversations with these clinics? Are you ready to The one thing that I try to imagine the most is what happens when I'm an analog technician, per se. I'm strictly doing analog workflows, and my best client gives me a call and says, "Hey, I really want to learn more about digital dentistry." Now, what I would do is I would take that conversation and say, "Hey, let's learn together." Um, and I think that's the best approach. I pulled a guy up in Chicago during my presentation, and we kind of role played the call, and he had a great answer. And I believe his name was Mark. But Mark, he looked, he probably looked like he was mid to late 50s probably. And he looked around that, almost that age where it's a little bit tougher. It's a little bit tougher to want to make the transition. It's not that you shouldn't. It's just a little bit tougher to want to do it. But Mark had the best response to that, in the fact that he said, "Well, Doc, I'm here in Chicago right now, and I'm here to learn about this, and I'm hoping to come back and tell you more about it when I get home." And I think that that's, if you're not there, that's the answer that you have to have. And I think that that's the answer that just will drive that relationship even farther. Because doctors just love learning with you, not just, they don't want to learn on their own and then tell you and then you figure it out. They love learning with you, because it makes that collaborative process so much better. Um,
John, I think patients are learning as well. So you have to be ready. The clinician, when the patient comes in and starts asking about, what digital technology are they using in their practice now? Because
sure.
there are a lot of, you know, people are starting to market to the patients. If you notice that, if you watch TV like I do from time to time, you'll start to see that a lot of the time they're talking about, 2-day dentures and things
Sure.
of that matter. So, it is coming on the marketing side to the patient, and the patients are coming into the clinic now and they're asking questions.
Right.
So it's
Right.
it's good. It's good to be able to speak to your clinicians about what's up the pike and what is out there, and being able to educate them so they can now decide when a patient walks in, they have the answers.
Correct. Correct. And I think that's only fair. It's really only fair to the patient to know what's available and what's out there, and what's easy, what's consistent, what fits the best. They need to have that. And even personally, I'm not a big sharer of my social life, but over the past few months or so, I've really kind of dedicated myself just to what you said is, patients deserve to know. They really deserve to know what's out there. Um, and I think everyone's really interested. Like when I show a picture of my printer opening up and having 8 dentures hanging, from the bill platform, people really think that's neat, and they're intrigued as to what that is and what I'm doing. And it's just a great conversation to have. So let's talk about what you need to get started. And really, the one thing, when I've been around and I've talked to groups, I think when I was in Chicago, it was kind of almost comedy, because probably 70% of the group that I spoke to, they were actually crown and bridge technicians. So you need some stuff to get this started and to be able to do it right. But if you are a crown and bridge lab where you've already been experiencing this technology and you already understand how to manipulate scans, and you've been working with this stuff, it's a really easy thing to implement if you're already there. Um, so let's talk about what you need. So you've got to have a validated printer, and we're going to go over those. You've got to have, for this specific system, the Lucitone Digital Print, you've got to have the validated curing unit. You can't try to find a workaround. It requires a specific wavelength, the specific heat, specific time frame. It's not worth trying to fight. You just need to get that curing unit. Um, I say fuse 1, 2, and 3. If you're printing your teeth, which I would highly suggest, you need fuse 2 and fuse 3. Um, you need a tack light. You need an ultrasonic cleaner. It's ultrasonic frequency is the best thing that actually gets this residual resin off of the prints. So you don't need any other type of printer. And that's one thing, when you're on socials, someone says, "Hey, I've got this haziness on my denture. Please help me. What did I do wrong?" And a lot of times it's because they didn't follow exactly what the handling instructions are, on the post processing part of this. And really, as long as you stick to it, it's relatively simple. Doesn't need a ton of equipment. You just have to do it right, and then you're good. So after the ultrasonic cleaner, you got to have the CAD system. I'm a 3Shape user. Plenty of people use ExoCAD. Um, you've got to have access to the tooth libraries, through Dentsply Sirona, and then you're going to clean all your parts in isopropyl alcohol. And that's really all you need to get started. And then obviously the materials themselves. Um, so let's talk about the validated printers. You've got carbon, you've got a Siga, you've got Hay gears, you've got the Dentsply Surround unit is a little bit more clinical based. And then the newest one is Formlabs. So that was one that I had a great conversation with their rep in the Zon Ballroom in Chicago, and it's a really neat option. I would say I'm not familiar with their printers, but I think in the past Formlabs was a closed system, and now they've opened it up where they're going to be more of an open system. You have to buy access to it, but once you buy access to it, I believe they call it an OMM, and I really don't know what that stands for, but um, it gives you the ability to open that system up and to be able to utilize other materials. Now, I use the Max UV for printing my teeth, and you could also, at a lower capacity, you could print bases on it, but you can only fit, I'd say 3 to 4 maximum. And if you were going to do 4, they would have to be like ideal smaller size dentures. Um, and then last year at Chicago, I purchased the Ultra, which the Ultra gives you the capacity. I think I've done up to 10 um, on the Ultra, and I think all 10 of those were really good size. Um, on this chart, it says 10 to 12. That 12, again, it would have to be ideal, smaller size bases. But that works out really well for me in my laboratory size. People use carbons. And I think that's it. But the Formlabs is a very interesting new, and again, it kind of goes back to where I was talking about that flexible material. Whenever a Siga got validated, in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, well, more printers are coming. But that doesn't necessarily mean, because what's hard is how long do you wait? You know, it's like even like this flexible material. I want to be able to utilize that tomorrow. Um, Now, does me getting into a carbon printer make sense tomorrow? I don't know. I'd have to look at that. But I want to get into those things. Now, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait 5 printers down the road to be validated or for another flexible material to come out to be able to start utilizing that technology. I need to be able to utilize that now so I can continue to scale. Um, the print-based properties, this is something that I kind of watch very closely um, whenever I watch another item be presented or if I'm looking at another material. Because going back to how Lucitone kind of released this product, I I watched closely at what they did, how they protected themselves and the brand. And one of the big protections that they did is they made sure they nailed this print base and its strength, because that was the biggest hiccup to the uh, other materials that were kind of getting in the market a little bit early. So it was funny, and I should have had it here with me, but on my desk I keep my upper and lower denture that I did for my CDT 15 years ago during my practical exam, and my denture is Lucitone 199, a packed denture, and Portrait IPN teeth. So it's really cool to kind of come full circle. And what got me to be a CDT, as far as the materials, obviously knowledge and hands-on, but the materials that got me to be a CDT are full circle. And here I am back, um, still utilizing those materials today. I had a rep that was in the ballroom in Chicago, and I just said, "Hey, man, I'm going to go up and talk about LDP. If you got anybody that has any extra questions, please feel free to reach out to me or have me come over, and I'll talk to them further." Um, and his question to me was, "Do you practice what you preach?" Um, and I think that's a huge thing for me as a technician. Is I'm not going to get in front of you and talk to you about something that I don't understand or that I haven't, at least invested in and utilized myself. So I kind of took a step back when he said that, but it makes sense, for the reason that he said it. So these strength numbers, they basically almost match the 199, which is huge for me. Just another quick story. I sat in on a course in Chicago. They took a chart like this and they rushed through it. And just just kind of just bypassed it. And then later in the Q&A section, I asked to go back to it just so I could, for my own personal knowledge, have comparison notes, because I know these numbers. And the response was those were just numbers. So be sure when you're going to put your name behind something that you know you're creating something that's going to be representing you well. This material is a bioactivated material, meaning as it warms up, as you put it in the patient's mouth, and as it increases in temperature, it actually increases in its flexure strength. So that's another really cool thing. Like I said before, I've had less than a handful of fractures, and we all know if we've lived any amount of time in the analog world, there's those troubled patients that you're just gonna have fractures. And this material really combats that. Here's a good example of the instrument testing that they did on the material as they were releasing. And I mean, that just almost looks like Valplast. And there's a lot of bend, but not a lot of break. So if you aren't familiar and you haven't dealt with any of this, you're going to print your base, and you can see kind of detailed in that picture where there's some sockets where your design teeth would go. So once you got to that step, you'd be printing, and then you'd be moving on to cleaning those parts. Let me say this as well. There's another webinar that I did with Fran on Zon Academy that was about 7 months ago, 8 months ago now. And I really go in detail even further into some of these items. So please use that as an even deeper resource with trying to learn about the materials and about how to do the nesting and just all those little things. It's all there. This is an example of that highly characterized I was talking about before. You can really see those mamelons, and it just blows me away that that's one singular material that they were able to print in that fashion. And then you also have a standard, which is a little bit more of almost like a classic tooth facing. Now, one thing that you can, as a business owner, you can look at and you can create levels to what this denture can produce. So you can find, just the click of a button can kind of change the price point. And, sometimes we've got to meet clinicians where they are in their practice. Not all clinicians are self-pay. Not all are, dealing with highly affluent people. Sometimes we have to provide options that fit their needs. This is another stat that I really thought that there had to have been a drop off between IPN denture teeth and a printed denture tooth, but in their wear studies, they basically hit it right on the head as far as the wear goes. So 0.09 you see there. There's the shade availability that's there, and that's all in IPN. Value has a little bit less shades, A1, A2, A3, B1, BL2, BL3. And that's what you're going to want to utilize for your monolithics. You can also utilize this as a value tooth selection. Now, I will tell you that I think it's $6 per arch for the value print teeth, or it's $12 per arch for IPN. So the strength of the value print is a 0.7, as far as the wear study goes, 0.7, and the IPN is a 0.09, meaning it wore less over time. So for something that's 7 times stronger for $6 more, I'm going to find a way to make sure my inpatient is receiving that higher level of quality on me personally. This is detailing that fusing step. So the fuse 2 is kind of it almost is the consistency of honey, and you're going to put that into those sockets. You're going to press those quadrants. Now these are photos of Jimmy Stiegel actually putting carded teeth, I believe, in those sockets. You would more than likely be utilizing a quadrant or a half or a whole arch to be fusing. Now, one thing that was really cool that I saw in Chicago, I saw someone utilizing a UV syringe to to add that fuse tube material into those sockets. And that was, you know, it's just one of those neat things. And I want to say back in my last webinar, I'm like, hey, let's all get involved in this because we are all incredibly innovative. That's what makes technicians, you know, better and better and better. And that's a great example of the more people that you get involved, the more eyes that get opened, the more light bulbs that go off, the, you know, and the farther and farther that we push these products. And that's where we get our individualization from. And we get, you know, we get back to just the artistry of it and not strictly just the workflows once we're all in it. So once you fuse in those sockets, then you are going to try to glaze. They started out with the step 3 total as more of a finishing of where the fuse tube kind of, if it missed anywhere, if like there was a little gap anywhere. And what they found is it made like a really nice glaze for the denture. So now they're actually really pushing, and this is how I utilize it, is I utilize that step 3 to basically glaze my entire denture. So I can stay off the pumice bench as much as possible. And this is detailing that step 3 sealer, and you can see on that denture that's in that picture, you can see the aesthetics of those interiors, and you can also see that that high luster of that sealer. This is detailing the validated cure units that I talked about before. Now there's a bigger option and there's a smaller option. You can see those capacities on the bigger one is 9 dentures at a time, and then the smaller one is 5. I currently have the smaller 5, which I love. And then the only difference is you'll see the cure cycles are a little bit different. The bigger one is 90 minutes, the smaller one is 60. And the only 30-minute difference is because the bigger one has to take a little bit longer to warm up. Because again, the material requires heat. Back to the target not moving, we were talking about having the access to education. Dentsply Sirona has these dates scheduled out for trainings in Charlotte. So please, if you're super interested, or if you've already purchased a bundle, or you're already utilizing it, take a look at and see about going to this 2-day course. Typically, Jimmy Stiegel or Christy Neff puts them on, and it's a really great place to get as many questions answered as you can. And what's amazing is you're in a room with technicians that are at the same place as you at that given time. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out how to implement it. And they do a nice job. And I did this, and honestly, very uncomfortable showing up to the training, not knowing what to expect. And then as I'm going back to the airport, I'm calling my wife. I'm saying, look, we are printing absolutely everything. This is not a trial run. This is actually something that's going to be viable and something you can be really excited about. So just to kind of close, some of my questions that I'd like to ask you is do you want to grow, but you're afraid of those pains? And what I mean by that is does the idea of growth just sound like, back when I was just an analog technician, back when I was at the bench, back when I was waxing everything, I was waxing my RPDs for castings. I'm doing repairs. I'm just doing the gambit. And there were times where the idea of growth was actually a painful thought. We all want to create more value, in this world, but at what cost? So I think for business owners and for individuals, it's how can we create that value without having to create any more pain? And I think that this system is something that can bring you that. So answer that question for yourself. And then my other question is, are you already experiencing like an increase in demand? Like, are you already seeing your denture numbers going up? Your employees' hours going up, the amount of time, setting teeth is going up. Are you already experiencing that? And then lastly, kind of back to the answer the call is, wholeheartedly try to decide how you're going to respond. Get your response ready for your number one client to give you a call and to tell you that it's time to figure out this digital dentistry thing. And just be prepared and have a great answer, because we all want you to continue living a great life in this industry. Um, and I think that sometimes it comes through a little bit of change and learning, but that's just been the state of this industry since I've been in it for 20 years. Is we're in a constant state of learning, and it's just not going to change. Might wear you out, but it's not going to change. So 80% of dentures right now are still analog, and I think that number is probably pushing down a little bit lower. But 100% of those can't reduce any chair time. So I think that's a huge item to look at. So think about joining the 20-30% of us that will soon, once those clinicians are driving that market, when they're demanding 100% of them to be digital dentures, we're going to need more than 30% of the workforce to do it. So please join us. Please take a look at your denture department. And thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. I love doing this stuff.
Great. So, John, I just put up a poll to see who's interested in LDP, from listening to your presentation today. And it was a great presentation. So thank you so much for that. But we have quite a few questions for you that I'm going to, give to you. For now, I'm just going to end this poll here.
Okay.
So thank you all for answering. And I'm going to feed you your first question. So the first one is from Michael, and he wants to know, how do we get the glue off the teeth so they don't have a pinkish tint to them?
Well, I think that comes with controlling it and knowing exactly how much you need to put in those sockets. But what I do and what I teach is any part that comes out of that socket, we need to wipe that towards the base. We want to get as much of that off as you can, really, but wipe it down towards the base. You don't ever really want it to, because then, like you said, Michael, you're starting to change the shade of the tooth as you allow that pink hue to get up on that gingival third. So you want to really dial in how much you're putting in there, and with experience, you'll get to a point where you're not having that issue.
So here's another poll. Are you interested in adding a 3D printer that it's validated with LDP to your lab? The next question is, do you have a specific printer or a special printer for any flexible material that you're printing right now?
I do not currently. I looked at now, like I said, Chicago, the Carbon just launched that flexible material, and I looked pretty closely at it. Now, there's other flexible materials that I've seen, but it kind of goes back to what I said about making sure that you partner with companies that can really support you. And I'm not saying that items that I picked up in Chicago wouldn't work, but when I'm a cautious buyer. So when I buy something and I buy the systems to be able to utilize it, I really want to know that it's going to be something that I can be supported and that I can use. So I would say honestly, and this is, like I said, this is me being ultra conservative. If I was someone that wanted to print flexibles, I would contact my Carbon rep.
Hey, the next question is, what is the process to finish a monoblock try-in that has a wash impression and teeth have been adjusted?
Say that. What is the process
Process to finish a
of
monoblock try-in that has a wash
so
impression and teeth have been adjusted?
teeth have been adjusted? Okay, so if it's a wash impression, so what I like to do with that is, and it really depends on where you are and where you started. So if that particular case was, say, it was an analog case, and we actually had physical models, what I would do is, I'm sorry, you're going to digitize this whole thing. So when you've got that wash impression, and if you have the wash impression back in your laboratory, like for me, I have a desktop scanner. So for me, what I would do is generate a model from that that intaglio surface, and then I would scan the bite, bring it all together, and then I would scan a copy denture. And then what I'm able to do is I'm able to take that intaglio data, pair it to my copy denture data, which then pairs it to my analog position, and then that can then give me a new working model. And what I do is once you basically you're going to kind of use a dummy order form per se to make a denture, just so that you can get all of those parts aligned. And then there's a save feature, so you use your sliders to get the items out of the way that you don't want to save. And then what you would do is save that intaglio scan to the opposing, and then that gives you your new orientation. So that takes care of your fit, and that also takes care of that bite issue. And then I would go back in and re-import my copy denture into that new work order, utilizing the intaglio scan as my working model, my opposing. Sorry, it's so hard to think of this while you're not doing it. Opposing, and then I would bring in that bite so that I could get those two items aligned with each other, and then I would bring my copy denture back in and bring it in alignment with that intaglio. So then now I have my new orientation, I have my original tooth arrangement, and I would, what I like to do, because I don't like to trick up the software. And again, if you were on 2023, there's a little bit better option for bringing in this that new wash. But for me, I like to redesign the denture right there, utilizing that information with that new centric relation.
Now, do you use a stain for the gingiva for the monoblock?
Is that a question, or is that your
Yeah.
brand
No, that's
question?
another question
Do I use stain?
for
Are
the
you
monoblock.
saying do I do any characterization on the gingiva?
Yeah,
I do not, but I think that's a great, it's a great idea for potentially doing like an immediate denture. Like I was talking
mm-hmm,
before, I think it'd be a great workflow to deliver that monoblock that someone could wear. Now, my fear for wearing a monoblock over a long period of time is that monoblock is out of teeth material. So
right.
that tooth material is designed to not wear. It's not necessarily designed to not break. So it's not something that I would feel super comfortable with telling someone to wear it long term. But I think you could really utilize some gingival characterizations through, through some kind of a staining system, to where you could create something that could be aesthetically worn while they were healing, to get to that reference opportunity to bring them into a final. And I will say this, another fear that clinicians have is making something for someone that they'll walk away with and try to utilize as a final. So
Right.
I have had that before. Um, they don't want to lose their customer because we've given them something to go down the road with, and it just becomes a whole financial mess on their side.
Now, how many dentures? Here's another question. Sorry about that. How many dentures do you do in a day? And how many people work for you? And how many printers do you have?
Yeah. So again, I only have the Max UV. I only have the Asiga Ultra. And to go back to talking about the vision of of myself and the vision of my business, I really, and I think that this is something that I've been thinking pretty heavily about lately. But um, there was quite a while where I really wanted to be a boutique laboratory. I've got, it's kind of an unknown hero in this business, but there's a particular speaker that is one of my heroes, um, and he operates a boutique laboratory. And for the longest time, I really thought that that was the solution for me. And since adopting Lucitone Digital Print and realizing the labor struggles that we have, um, I realized that there's a big need to train more people. There's a big need to be bigger than just me. There's a big need to transfer that knowledge into the next generation. So currently, right now, we're 3 employees with just those 2 printers. And it really all depends, because we are not full service, but we do offer partials, dentures. We run the gambit as far as the removable side of things. It just depends on what the day's like as far as
Mhm.
production goes. Like I said,
And
some days are RPD heavy, some days are denture heavy, some days
right, it
are just
depends.
knick-knack heavy.
The last question that we have is how do you add an existing denture study model to a denture design?
Add an existing denture study, like just an additional scan.
Yeah, like just an
That would
existing
just
denture, just using a desktop scanner to scan it in?
yeah, if you had a desktop scanner to scan it in, or if a doc scanned reference denture on their side,
Mhm.
they can give you that additional scan. There's a little additional scan feature. It's a on 3Shape. It's a Bluetooth with a little it's got like a little orange star on it, and it's kind of the additional scan icon. And that's where you're able to go back into your system, and you've got to understand how to kind of work your computer a little bit as far as where your files end up. And that's one thing. It's like a big file cabinet, and it's just all digitized, so you got to figure out where to go find those files. And then once you bring them in, you're able to completely manipulate those and get them into the alignment where you want them. But I guess my question for that would be um, what you're trying to reference within that study model. Like if you're talking about referencing a denture, then you want to try to get into that reference workflow versus trying to reference just a scan of a denture, because you lose that alignment ability when you don't have that wash impression, when you don't bring all that information into one place.
Well, thank you so much for all of the questions, and thank you so much, Jonathan, for this great presentation. It was really unbelievable and, opening up what you do every day and giving some, insight to all of our customers here on Zon Academy. We really appreciate it. I just want to let everybody know next week we have a virtual collaboration between the clinic and the dental lab featuring Nemo Studio, which is a design software. We have Phil Marianacci here from 360 DigiLab, along with Dr. Brian O'Neill, one of his clinicians, to discuss how this great software and their collaboration has helped so many of their patients. So really, join us next week. You won't be sorry. That's on March 26th. And then every Tuesday in April. So we're adding a day to our Zon Academy. We usually do all of our education on Wednesdays, but every Tuesday in April, starting on April 1st, we're going to be diving deep into exocad design, starting with getting started and, a single crown, all the way through to all annex design and everything in between. So dentures will be in there, designing partials will be in there, surgical guides. So we really hope that you can join us on Zon Academy on Tuesdays in April. You have to go to Eventbrite to sign up for these, and we look forward to seeing you there. We're coming to your backyard as well. Zon Roadshows are back, and we're going to be starting also in April. So we're going to be hitting Arizona in April, Dallas in May, and Philly in June. And every month through November, we're going to be going to a different city. So stay tuned for all of those dates. We'll be giving those out every Zon Academy. So I want to thank you, Jonathan. I want to thank Dennis Plycerona, and I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.